Welcome
Okay.
to the Once and Future Authors podcast. I'm Stephanie, and I am so delighted to be joined today by author Patricia Simpson. Patricia is a writer of gothic, paranormal, dark fantasy, dreadpunk, which I can't wait to hear what that actually means from the author's mouth as opposed to the Amazon description. I see her smiling already, so please welcome Patricia Simpson. Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you. Thank you, Stephanie. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Really
Oh,
kick
I'm
out of you.
always thrilled to have you. Absolutely thrilled to have you. And yes, I had to throw in there that dread punk bit, but you are quite prolific. Bring me back before we even get to that to how you got started writing. What
Oh,
journey?
it was called boredom because I was raised in this really small town in Montana, and we would travel great distances, like just to buy our shoes or a nice coat or something. It would take us 3.5 hours to get to a big town. And there's no radio stations. We didn't have CD players in our cars or iPhones or anything. You just sat there looking outside that Volkswagen bus as my dad is smoking inside the car.
So were
And
you actually writing, sitting there in your seat?
no, but I'm looking out and saying, oh, what would happen if we rolled off this cliff and this policeman, this trooper came to save me, and he was really handsome. That's how it all starts. Your mind starts.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we ran over Bigfoot, or.
But yet not every single person in Montana writes.
Exactly. But for some reason, I was actually punished for taking books to the dinner table. Stop reading, because I just love stories. But I always say the one thing that made me write paranormal stories is I checked out the Armenian Wonder Tales, I think they are, from the library, and there was a story in there called "The Boy Who Took the Letters to the Dead." And that really, I still get chills thinking of that. That concept was very interesting to me, and I loved Egyptian mummies and horror films, and I just started writing stories about Egypt and Dracula. And I had one of my plays produced in junior high. Yeah, Dracula.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so this is definitely way back.
Oh yeah. I've been
Things.
in junior high. I was writing longhand, 150-page novels. And I'm such a nerd. I begged my parents, please give me a typewriter for Christmas. So they did. And then I begged my first husband, please get me one of those electronic brother typewriters. And it had a little screen where you could see what you were typing, but it saved it.
Right.
You could see it like 3 words at a time as you're typing.
Oh my gosh, and that's how these first books were done.
Yeah, I remember sending typed manuscripts that you had white out on and taped pieces of paper. Oh man, I'm so happy for computers because I've been writing forever.
I
Yeah.
can only imagine how happy you are for a computer. Now, if you suddenly want to add in a new scene in the middle.
Oh, yes. I wrote so much that the letter E fell off my typewriter striker key on my typewriter.
No way. Now
And it wasn't.
You know your favorite letter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Boy, so it's gotten easier over time then, writing. Does that mean you are writing more? I meant the process.
The process is easier.
The physical process, not
Yeah.
the creative process.
Creative process has remained the same, a challenge and a joy, challenge and a joy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was the first genre that you wrote in? Was it that paranormal?
Yeah, well, my very first novel that I illustrated when I was, I don't know, 12 with the felt tip marker, orange and black, very, very nice combo, was called The Day He Opened the Coffin. And it just kind of spiraled down from there.
And then you at some point added in romance, gothic, fantasy. How did those things come into your bag of tricks, shall we say?
Well, I'm going to go back to the hardware side of things because I was going through a terrible time in my first marriage, and I was just tired of the the stuff that was going on with my husband and I just got a Macintosh computer. Do you remember the ones that were like white and they were like this high? It was a
Yep.
Mac Plus, and they actually let me take that home to work from my work because I could work at home and do a lot more work. I was like the first remote worker, so I would take that little Macintosh home, and I just fell in love with it. And I said to myself, I wish I could meet a man that I love as much as this Macintosh computer. And well, lo and behold,
That's definitely the best thing I've heard.
lo and behold, I thought of a story about the Scotsman named Hazard McAllister that comes out of a computer as a 3D hologram, and the heroine falls in love with him.
No,
That
you
was my
actually imagined a Scotsman coming out of a Macintosh computer,
yeah.
and your
And
your
yeah.
husband is
Scottish. I have this video on YouTube where I say, can you write things into your life? Because I wrote a couple of Scottish heroes. And, now I'm married to this guy, and he's he's not like a drop dead gorgeous guy, but he is very heroic and he's very charismatic, and he's Scottish. And I think I just wrote my character right into my life.
You just inspired a whole lot of people to just turn off our podcast and start writing their dream man, because if Patricia Simpson can do it, so can I.
Hey, I wrote about a heroine that had a head injury and she couldn't have her daughter with her. She had to prove she was okay for a couple of years. And I fell off my deck when I was demolishing it and had a really bad head injury.
No.
And now I'm writing about a virus that's attacking, vampires.
No.
And I'm thinking, oh no, come on.
Okay, we need to be careful about what you write.
Exactly. So now I'm writing about my daughter becoming a famous actress. So, hey, we'll see what happens.
I think that's a great idea. I think people are going to start putting in requests with you. Maybe
Yeah. Oh, hey.
money. This is a moneymaker.
It's called The Ghostwriter. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
What? Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
I better go.
You have things to do.
That is a great idea, Stephanie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. You know how for saints, they leave stuff or requests for saints to do miracles?
Right, the ghostwriter.
Yeah. I don't think that's been done.
But I think I know who's going to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Can you promise me a few more minutes before you start writing them?
Yeah.
And then you have to promise me to come on the show so that we can do a big book release and and everything on Zoom, because of your virus book, we're still going to be here.
Oh.
I mean, now you tell me, I didn't read the virus book. How does it end?
Well, this is the Apothecary is
That's
first
the virus book. Yes.
Yes, the vampires have a virus and their skin is they're kind of like aging real slowly, but they're actually getting like fungus and stuff on them, and they don't know what it is. They're getting sick. So
do they get the vaccine? Because
they're looking for one. They're looking for somebody. Let me show you. In this book, they're looking for somebody that has a very special blood type, because she's half vampire and half human.
Ooh.
So yeah, that's the London Chronicles that I've been immersed in for the past 5 or so years.
Okay, so if you too are wondering how this story ends,
Yeah.
Run, do not walk. How many books are in the Wando Chronicles?
There's 3 plus a novella that started it off, and it was my writing buddies and I on a lark just decided, excuse me, that we were going to write something fun, 25,000 words, just a piece of cake.
Right.
And I created this world called Londo City.
Oh no.
And it's kind of a steampunk book, but Prodigy, Phoenix, and Apothecary are dreadpunk.
Okay, now that's what I was going to ask next is tell me a little bit about steampunk, dreadpunk. How do we know what we're reading or writing?
Yes, that's a really good question, because when I was trying to describe what I'm writing to my writer friends, they go, "Okay, is it a gothic?" And I said, "Not quite." "Is it romance?" "Not quite." "Is it a horror?" And I said, "Not quite." And they said, "Well, what is it?" And I didn't know. And then I was just doing some kind of web search on Hammer Films, because I was just doing some article. And this guy invented this term called dreadpunk. And I thought, Eureka, that's exactly what I'm writing. And he just coined this phrase a couple of years ago, I think in 2015. And it's a mixture of horror, gothic, set in London, usually in the Victorian era.
Look at that. So you got your
Yeah,
category.
yeah. And there's a lot of people that like that. There was a series called Carnival Row on and Penny Dreadful. They are dreadpunk kind of series. They were really good.
And how is that varying from steampunk? Is it dreadpunk if it's in London and steampunk if it's someplace else? Or
No, dreadpunk, it's dark and people wear nice clothing and they're subtle, and they usually don't have vehicles and things like that. It's more, carriages and horses and stuff. And steampunk is all about like Jules Verne with the balloons and the weird inventions, and they've got guns and lots of holsters and stuff. It's more adventure, not so much gothic.
fantastic. And you
Yeah.
you kind of answered, but I want to go back to it. That you don't necessarily write for a category, that you were writing because of this where the story was leading
Of
you.
course.
And
Yes.
you say, of course, but these are great tidbits for our writers out there who sometimes think this is what I'm doing, and now there's a set of kind of rules and regulations around us. So bring us back a little bit to book development. I love that.
Okay. Yeah. That's a really good point. And it's a subtle one, because there are, like for sci-fi, there are certain tropes that readers expect. And if you want to have a wide readership, you have to bear those in mind when you're writing. But when you're writing a book that really compels you, I I would first forget about the tropes and write what compels you, because there is no mistaking that passion when someone reads a passionate kind of story. It's hard for me to explain, but I will never write for the market. Never. That's probably why I'm not a millionaire. But I just follow my heart.
No, I'm so glad you made that distinction because, I'm asked constantly about, certainly writing to the market and not. And I'm one thing I really appreciate about what you just said is you recognize full well that you are being true to you and to your story, and that
Right.
you are not deliberately taking that step to write to market. Not everybody is as self-aware as what you just said. They kind of have a foot in both camps. I want to do what I want to do, but I also want to write to market. And I like
Yes.
awareness there.
Yeah. And there are those that don't know what the tropes are. They think, they say they're writing something, but they haven't educated themselves enough to know what the rules are.
Mhm.
Before, you have to know what the rules are before you break them or ignore them. So you know, just don't
Oh,
go starting to write without educating yourself.
huge nugget right there. I'm one for pulling out, it's like an interview with a highlighter pen, and I want to make sure everybody heard what you just said. You
Mhm.
need to know the rules in order to break them. Too often people the number one way, of course, to improve your writing, I would say, would be reading and read and read and read and read,
Right. Yes.
that what are the rules, and that goes for also. I mean, if you want to spell incorrectly or use a different slant on grammar in your book because it works with the character, it works if you knew what the rule was in the first place.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it goes with the tropes that you're talking about. Know what the parameters are, shall we say, and then feel free to break them. But
Sure. And keep it simple, because eventually most writers do want to sell their book either to an agent or, readers.
right,
And if you can't describe the book, I mean, people want to know that it's sci-fi, and it's set in it's fantasy, but it's a medieval fantasy. It's not a space fantasy. So you have to know how to describe it. You can't just say, well, it's time travel, but it's sci-fi and there's some horror in it. It's just the readers just don't know. It's just there's too many choices.
right. And there's too many
Yeah.
choices if an author like yourself was describing it, but too often we don't even have that chance. It's what they can find on Amazon. And
Exactly.
what you just said, where the book is placed, kind of like what I say, what shelf it's on in a bookstore.
Yes. Mhm.
If they don't know what shelf to go to, they're not going to find your book.
And sometimes that is oh, I'm sorry, I just got a message that dang. Sometimes, and I have trouble with this myself. I don't know what the category is that I'm writing at first. I just don't know.
Yeah, and the categories are changing. I mean, there are approximately 10,000 categories today, or maybe that was yesterday, because they're different. Things are getting added. If there are enough books that are pushing the envelope, let's say, in a particular area, categories are added. So it's not that you don't know, it's that it might not even exist yet.
Yeah. That's what tags are for. I mean, tags are wonderful, the hashtags where you don't have to explain it, you just say what's in there.
Right,
And
exactly.
it kind of helps, but it's hard to do hashtags in an elevator talking to an agent.
You should carry a little hashtag sign.
I know, exactly. I think one of the hardest things for a writer is actually creating an elevator pitch. What's your book about, Patricia?
In
Yeah,
most, 15 seconds or less. Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard to hammer that out.
But I'm so glad that you're saying that, because you're giving credence to the fact that you need to do that. All authors
Yes,
for their books should know what is the elevator pitch for this book, because Patricia Simpson's been in an elevator with an agent. She needed to know it.
I'm the worst though at that. So yeah, I still grapple.
It's not easy, and especially
Yeah,
because as the author, all 300 pages of it, and
yeah,
to try to narrow it down is almost like playing favorites with
yeah.
storylines and characters.
I've been working at a little app. I did an article on how to do a one sentence pitch using certain, like, remember Mad Libs where you fill in the blank? Because there should be certain things in that sentence, like the issue and what the person intends to do. And if you could just fill in the blank and then just make the sentence, it really helps. And so I've been kind of using that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That's on my website.
Right. And then for
Yeah.
any book,
Pardon me?
for any of your books, you're all ready. You've got the framework.
Yes.
Now, you have so many books in so many different genres. Do you have a favorite book or genre? Are you allowed to say, or are you like parents not being allowed to say who their favorite child is?
I think, well, always the last book I've written is usually my favorite because it's still so dear to my heart. And this one, I particularly love, Phoenix, because it's a redemption story about a woman that was very self-involved and weak in the first book, and she really becomes a woman. And it has a hero from Croatia in it who's real sunny, and believes in her. And I just really like their dynamic. So that's my favorite right now. But my very favorite of all time books that I've written is called Raven and Amber. And it's about a Native American man who is through with women, especially blondes. He's just lost all of his hope and faith in his tribe, and about a white woman that comes to the reservation looking for her friend who was an illustrator, and she's disappeared. And it's when those two people meet, it's just really, really a great book. And
Wow.
it's based on real life events, because the Native Americans up above Seattle were going to, instead of doing like a casino, they decided they were going to start an oyster hatchery and raise oysters, because you get really good oysters from that part of the world. And so they created this bay, and it was successful, I think, only for a couple of years. And then this huge storm hit and it flooded with mud, and that was it. I mean, of all the luck, and that happens in my book.
Wow. And
Yeah.
and I can't help but notice that you're blonde, and this protagonist was blonde. So I'm wondering if you met the Native American where they.
Well, he was inspired by, I did a lot of research because I wrote a couple Native American books. And I opened this book, and there was this black and white photo from the Smithsonian of Olathe is his name. And he was a chief of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz, Oregon. And he just struck my heart. And so he is the image I had in my mind when I wrote about Kitsap McKenna.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but I was a redhead at that time. So
I love the way you described with that book the first seed of the story. How just opening this unrelated book and seeing a picture and how many things can grow out of that.
yeah.
People will say to me, "Oh, I want to write. I don't even know where to begin. How do I get an idea?" And the way you just described that.
Oh, it just went into me. And that's the way she meets him in the first part of the book. At the first time is she goes into his grandfather's lodge. It's dark, and he's lying there because he got there. He lived somewhere else, and he wakes up. No, she wakes up, and he's looking down at her, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's Olate. I don't know. I still like that scene so much.
Wow, wow.
But
You're
I have a critique member that says, I don't know what I'm going to do because I finished my book and I just don't have any more ideas. And I have never experienced that, because all my ideas come from like a newspaper article, or they found some mummy, or they found a king under the parking lot in, London or somewhere. And it's like, there's thousands of things that can spur your imagination
right.
out there.
And I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes I think people who are writers consider it a very interior action, and they're by themselves and they're blocking out the world and they're not reading magazines, newspapers, or things like that. So if they have no ideas, maybe they need to get out of their house,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Read it. Yes. Just,
or at least get out of their head.
yeah. It's hard. Writing is a
Oh,
serious, tough, and really exciting business. I just can't imagine making a living from stuff that you bring out of the ether and put down,
I love that vision though of bringing it out of the ether, and which
Yeah.
implies that it's all in the ether, that there's this, aura that's just all around, and we need to draw it out. So your friend who has no ideas needs to maybe get some fresh air and be closer to where they,
Yeah.
surround yourself with it somehow.
She does write she writes kind of like funny stories, comedies. So, you don't find too much of that in the newspaper, do you?
Oh, that's very
Oh,
true. That's very true. I guess that's a people watching kind of a thing that you
you
want.
know, like, yeah, man in clown suit robs McDonald's. I don't know. You just don't see it.
Comedy is rough, but all
Yeah.
writing is rough. I mean,
Yeah.
we're sitting here. Tell me a little bit about your gothic writing. How did you get into that? That's a very specific.
Yes, that is a great question. Because I spent 25 years living in the misty, moody area of Seattle, Washington. And one of my favorite places to go was an 1880s town, used to be as its port was as big as New York's at the time. And the railroad never made it up to Port Townsend. And so it kind of died on the vine. But they have gorgeous Victorian and Queen Anne homes there. And they're like B&Bs. And I used to go there. And I just love old houses and the stories they tell. And then I moved to California with my new second husband. And he goes, "Oh, you're going to love Alameda, California. You're just going to love it." And I said, "No, I love Seattle. I can't imagine leaving this place." And I get to Alameda. It's an island. It's full of Victorian homes. It has nice weather. What is not to love? And yeah, I take old house tours all the time, and I love to hear what happened there. And I hate basements. And so and what I like about a Gothic is that it's usually a woman that is by herself, sometimes an orphan, usually no family, that ends up in a, creepy house. Something happens and it takes place over a short amount of time. That's the kind of story I like.
Now, do you live in a Victorian with a
I
basement?
I couldn't. I'd be too scared. I'd be too
He
scared.
lives in a beach house, which is a ranch with no basement.
I this root cellar is like as much basement as I can stand, and it's tiny. I can see everything. There are no dark corners.
Oh, good, good. Nothing behind. Yeah, well, I'm sure that you have an imagination. You can imagine what's behind those dark corners.
Yeah.
All the what could be. Is there a genre that you haven't yet put your toe into that you're thinking about in the future?
Oh, I don't write sci-fi. Like space sci-fi, and I don't write action novels. And I wish I could write comedy. Boy, I wish I could, but I just can't do that. I can't do chick lit at all.
It is definitely.
But I wish I would. I wish I would have written Bridgerton.
Oh, yes. That was.
I do like the.
I was going to.
Yeah, I do.
Is there a
Sorry.
book you wish you would have written in Bridgerton? Well, the whole series.
Yeah. I love Anne Rice. She's one of my heroes. So she got me thinking about writing about vampires, and I put it off for so many years. The London Chronicles is actually my first vampire novel after all these years of writing, because I thought I'll never live up to Anne Rice's vampires. Never. But I think mine are pretty good.
I think so. But so comedy, romance, fluff, chick lit, not happening.
Yeah, I am just, I like fluff, and I love to watch rom-com movies. I just can't write them.
It's not for everybody. What else do you like to do in your spare time? What are some fun things we don't know about you?
Well, as I've mentioned to you in the past, I'm a shameless karaoke addict, and I've sung probably 4,000 songs on this stupid app that I sing with, that you can sing with people from all over the world.
Really?
And make a video with them. You don't sing together at the same time, but they'll open a song with the part for you, and you can see them when you're singing, and then it melds those two videos together, much like you and me are doing now.
Right.
And it's so wonderful, and you make friends.
Oh my gosh!
All over the world.
It was a thing. I was thinking, oh gosh, there's a pandemic. I guess nobody's doing karaoke, because I picture it happening in a smoky bar on a Friday night.
Yeah. Some people really get into it. They wear wigs and makeup, and it's like, I have lights. I used to just sing in my bedroom.
Karaoke background there. I love that.
Yeah, it's just it's really kept me sane, and music is has a special place for me, because I play guitar, and I played clarinet for 12 years and got pretty serious about it. Yeah.
Now, classical clarinet or jazz clarinet?
Classical. It's odd because I love jazz, but I could never, I just learned to read music with that instrument. I never learned to play by ear. with that instrument, not like a guitar. It's so weird. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Are you more of a symphonic chamber music? What's your
Yeah.
favorite
Yeah.
clarinet?
Yeah. Mozart. Mozart. Hands down.
Clarinet concerto. What's not to like?
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know.
Exactly. So clarinet and karaoke and
Mhm.
reading, shameless chicklet when she's not working.
Oh, I don't read it. I just watch it.
Oh, okay. You gotta wait till the movie comes out, huh? Or the TV
Yeah.
show.
I'm in a book club for the first time because I recently retired. So now I have time to do the stuff that I really like. And so I joined a book club with a friend of mine, and I have just rediscovered just reading literary novels. And we just got done discussing one called The Sea Island Women. And they were divers in this island off the coast of Korea. And
Mhm.
they ruled their households. It was just really an amazing story. The Island of the Sea Women. Yeah, they would dive down and harvest seafood.
Who knew? Who
I
knew?
know. I just love reading. I don't read romance novels. That's the odd thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to do during this newfound time with retirement?
Well, we bought this acreage outside the city limits. We have like 7 acres. Lots of it is pasture, but we have a huge garden. And so we're going to try to be gardeners this year.
My gosh, you're going to be enough that you can just be self-sufficient with your own food supply that much?
Yep, we're hoping. We have a well, and we're hoping we could become self-sufficient if we had to. And we have a stable, we could raise some animals if we wanted.
Oh my goodness, look at
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
There's going to be a book about it.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, the screenplay that I just completed was set on this property, and it involved horses, and yeah, I'm trying to write horses into my life. So there you go.
I love that. Well, if you ride horses into your life, you're going to have horses in your life.
Yes, I hope
That's
so.
for sure. Well, I
Yeah.
just want to remind anybody who is watching or listening, patriciasimpson.com. There is plenty there to keep you busy, whether you're still locked up or want to get your own creative juices going. Head over there, whether you like gothic, paranormal, dark fantasy, dreadpunk, or all of that stuff in the cracks that have not yet been named. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of cracks that haven't been named yet. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's
And
always a pleasure.
I want to read that next book about the ghostwriter, that's for sure.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm putting that in my noggin.
All right, it's in the noggin, which means it's going to happen. Thanks so
Okay.
much. And for all of our viewers and listeners, happy reading.